Seaman Hiro Tanaka's hand hovers over the telephone. On the radar screen in front of him, 70 contacts glow green against the black background. 70 miles out, closing at 300 miles per hour. The math is simple, 14 minutes until they arrive. But his finger won't move. The radar malfunctioned 3 times last week. Ghost signals, phantom contacts that vanished when fighters scrambled to intercept nothing but empty sky. His commanding officer had been clear. Next false alarm means court-martial. Next false alarm means disgrace. 12 minutes have already passed since first detection. Down in the lagoon below his station, 45 ships sit at anchor in the early morning calm. 4,500 men are eating breakfast, writing letters home, sleeping in their bunks. The smell of miso soup and rice drifts up from the galleys. Welders repair hull plates on a damaged cruiser. A supply officer checks inventory lists. They have no idea what is coming. Hiro's finger trembles above the phone. The contacts are still there, growing larger, multiplying, 6 minutes remaining. This is the story of how 18 minutes of hesitation killed an empire's fortress and changed naval warfare forever. February 17th, 1944. Truk Lagoon, Caroline Islands, Central Pacific. The Japanese called it their Gibraltar of the Pacific. 40 miles of protected anchorage surrounded by a coral barrier reef. 4 fortified islands. 45 warships and merchant vessels nestled inside nature's perfect harbor. The defensive array was formidable. 365 aircraft stationed on 4 airfields. 250 anti-aircraft guns positioned on every hilltop and beach. Early warning radar with a theoretical detection range giving 2 hours notice of any approaching threat. For 3 years, not a single American bomb had fallen on Truk. Not one American aircraft had penetrated its defenses. Japanese naval planners considered it impregnable. The distance from American bases in the Marshall Islands exceeded 1,000 miles, far beyond the range of any carrier strike force. Or so they believed. 90 miles to the northeast, hidden by darkness and radio silence, the largest concentration of naval power ever assembled in the Pacific War bore down on that belief. 9 American carriers, 600 aircraft, 7 battleships. Among those battleships, 2 were unlike anything the world had ever seen. USS Iowa and USS New Jersey. Sister ships of a revolutionary class designed to hunt down and destroy anything that floated. The myth that would emerge from what happened next spoke of 11 Iowa-class battleships firing 297 shells in a single devastating night bombardment that obliterated Truk. The truth involved only 2 battleships, but what they accomplished proved deadlier than any myth. This is the story of 3 men whose decisions in the next 48 hours would reshape the Pacific War. Vice Admiral Takeshi Yamakawa, commander of Truk's naval forces, a man whose son served on a destroyer anchored 800 yards from his flagship. Rear Admiral Marcus Webb, commander of the American Carrier Task Force, a man who carried 16 names of dead pilots in his wallet and wondered how many more he would add. Seaman First Class Hiro Tanaka, 19 years old, a radar operator whose 12-minute hesitation at 0600 hours would haunt him for the rest of his life. You will witness the most devastating carrier strike in naval history. 32 ships sunk in a single morning. You will see a 4-hour night battle where 2 battleships created the illusion of 11 through sheer firepower and technological superiority. You will understand the moment when battleship warfare died and carrier aviation was born. By the end, you will know why the myth of 11 battleships persisted for 80 years, and why the truth is more terrifying than legend. Vice Admiral Takeshi Yamakawa stood on the bridge wing of the light cruiser Hiryu and watched the sunrise paint the lagoon gold. 58 years old, career naval officer, veteran of the China campaign, a man who had spent 35 years climbing the ranks through diligence and caution. Not brilliance, not political connections, just steady, reliable competence. The kind of officer Tokyo trusted to command a secondary base while more aggressive men led the fleet in decisive battles. 45 vessels filled his field of vision. His flagship Hiryu, 2 other light cruisers, 6 destroyers, submarines, oilers, transports, repair ships, the logistical backbone of the combined fleet's forward operations, and 1 destroyer in particular. 800 yards off the starboard beam, Didi Asuka, his son served aboard that ship. Lieutenant Kenji Yamakawa, 22 years old, gunnery officer, fresh from the Naval Academy with honors and enthusiasm and all the cocky certainty of youth. The boy wanted glory, wanted to fight the Americans in surface action like the heroes of Tsushima Strait 40 years prior. Instead, Yamakawa had pulled strings to get his son assigned to Truk, to the safest posting in the Pacific, to the Gibraltar that could not fall. He had made a promise to his wife on her deathbed 3 years ago. Stomach cancer, 6 terrible months watching her fade. Her final words whispered through morphine haze. Take care of our boy. Keep him safe. Promise me. He had promised. Bringing Kenji to Truk was how he kept that promise. Or tried to. The irony gnawed at him. In staff meetings over the past 6 months, Yamakawa had opposed Truk's defensive strategy, had argued carefully and respectfully that the base was vulnerable, that the lagoon was a trap. Surrounded by coral reef, ships could not maneuver. If American carriers somehow reached striking distance, the anchored vessels would be helpless targets. Tokyo had dismissed his concerns. The Americans lacked the range. Their carriers could not operate so far from friendly bases. The defensive perimeter would hold. Yamakawa did not believe it, but he had orders, and career officers follow orders. So here he stood, guardian of a fortress he suspected was doomed, father to a son he had sworn to protect. The sunrise was beautiful. The air smelled of salt and diesel fuel and frying fish from the galley. Peaceful, routine. Yamakawa allowed himself a moment of hope. Perhaps Tokyo was right. Perhaps Truk truly was safe. Perhaps the war would end before his son ever saw combat. Perhaps Kenji would return home to marry that fisherman's daughter he wrote about in his letters. Michiko, the girl from their hometown who waited for him. Perhaps the promise could be kept. 90 miles to the northeast, Rear Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the flag plot aboard USS Enterprise and studied aerial reconnaissance photographs of Truk under the red glow of combat lighting. 57 years old, lean and weathered like driftwood. One of naval aviation's pioneers who had commanded the carrier Hornet during the Doolittle raid on Tokyo 2 years prior. The man who had launched 16 Army bombers from a carrier deck and sent them to bomb the Japanese home islands when everyone said it was impossible. He understood carrier warfare better than almost anyone alive, understood how to project power across vast distances, how to strike hard and vanish before the enemy could respond, how to rewrite the rules of naval combat, and he understood costs. His intelligence officer pointed to the photographs spread across the plotting table. 45 vessels confirmed in the lagoon, sir. The latest intercepts suggest major units are present, possibly Yamato and Musashi. Webb said nothing. His face revealed nothing. He knew the truth. Intelligence decrypts from 3 days ago had confirmed that the super battleships Yamato and Musashi had departed Truk for Palau. The decisive battle he had hinted at to his pilots, the chance to sink the largest battleships ever built, was impossible. The targets remaining at Truk were secondary. Light cruisers, destroyers, submarines, auxiliaries. Valuable, yes. Worth destroying, certainly. But not the war-winning blow he had implied. If his men knew they were risking their lives to attack a supply depot rather than the main fleet, morale would suffer. Enthusiasm would wane. Some might question whether the risk was worth the reward. So Webb stayed silent. Let them believe they were hunting dragons. He had learned this calculus early in the war. After Midway, after Guadalcanal, after watching good men die for objectives that seemed meaningless until you understood the larger strategy, leaders lied to preserve fighting spirit. Not malicious lies, necessary omissions, strategic silences, the cost of command. Webb reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. Opened it, 16 small pieces of paper, each one carefully folded. 16 names written in his own handwriting. Lieutenant Robert King, Ensign William Morrison, Lieutenant Junior Grade Thomas Chen, 14 others, pilots killed in previous strikes, men he had sent to die, men who had trusted his orders and never came home. Webb kept the names because someone needed to remember them, because 16 families had received telegrams beginning with the words, "We regret to inform you," because the weight of command should not be borne lightly. How many more names before this war ended? He folded the wallet and returned it to his pocket, looked at the photographs of Truk. 45 ships, Thousands of men who did not yet know their fortress was about to burn. Prepare the strike, Webb said quietly. Launch at 0630. I want first wave over target at dawn. His staff officers acknowledged and departed to issue orders. Webb remained alone in the flag plot, staring at the photographs, wondering if what he was about to do was murder or warfare, wondering if there was any difference anymore. Dublon Island, northern shore of Truk Lagoon. 600 hours. The radar station was a concrete bunker half buried in the hillside. Inside Seaman First Class, Hiro Tanaka sat before the Type II Mark II air search radar and tried to stay awake. 19 years old. From Hokkaido in northern Japan, son of a fishing family. His older brother had been a pilot killed at Midway 2 years ago when American dive bombers destroyed 4 Japanese carriers in 5 minutes. Hiro had volunteered to avenge him, had expected to be trained as a pilot or gunner, had imagined glorious combat. Instead, the Navy had assigned him to radar operator school. Technical training, electronics, mathematics, interpreting green blips on a black screen in a bunker that smelled of mildew and cigarette smoke. You are more valuable here, his commanding officer had said. Radar wins wars now. It felt like cowardice. Safe duty while other men fought. The night shift was ending. 10 minutes until relief. Hiro rubbed his eyes and stared at the screen. The sweep line rotated, green phosphorescence fading. Nothing but sea clutter and the permanent echoes from the surrounding islands. Then at exactly 0600 the screen changed. Contacts, multiple contacts, bearing 045 degrees, range 70 miles, altitude 25,000 feet, speed 300 miles per hour. Hiro's training kicked in. Count the contacts, estimate the formation, prepare the report. He counted 70 contacts, no more. 80, still multiplying as the radar swept. His hand reached for the telephone to alert the command center, then stopped. The radar had malfunctioned 3 times in the past week. False contacts, ghost signals caused by atmospheric conditions or equipment glitches. The first time he had reported it immediately. Fighters had scrambled. Patrol boats had raced to intercept. Nothing had been found. The second time, his officer had been angry, wasting fuel and pilots on ghosts. The third time, the officer had threatened him. Next false alarm means court-martial. Next false alarm means I will personally ensure you are transferred to the most miserable posting in the South Pacific. Do you understand? Hiro understood. He stared at the screen. The contacts were still there, 70 miles out now, closing, probably another malfunction. The equipment was temperamental, prone to false readings when atmospheric conditions were unusual. Wait and see. If they disappear, no report needed. If they persist, then call. The sweep rotated, 0603. The contacts remained 65 miles. Hiro's stomach tightened. His mouth went dry. Maybe real, maybe not. 0606. Contacts multiplying, 90 signatures now, 60 miles out. His hand moved toward the phone, hesitated. If this was real, he was already too late. If it was false, his career was finished. Court-martial, disgrace, his family dishonored, his brother's sacrifice wasted, the paralysis of impossible choices. 0609, 50 miles out, 11 minutes until arrival if the speed estimate was accurate. Decision point. Hiro closed his eyes, thought of his brother burning in the cockpit of his Zero at Midway, thought of his father mending fishing nets in Hokkaido, thought of the oath he had sworn when he joined the Navy. His hand grabbed the telephone. 0612. 12 minutes wasted. He dialed the command center. The phone rang twice before someone answered. Radar station 3. Multiple air contacts bearing 045. Range 50 miles. Speed 300. Estimate 90-plus aircraft. The voice on the other end paused. Are you certain? Contacts confirmed, Hiro said. His voice did not shake. 90-plus aircraft inbound. Stand by. The line went silent. Hiro stared at the screen. 45 miles now. The contacts were not ghosts. They were real, and they were coming, and he had given Truk 8 minutes of warning. 8 minutes to scramble fighters. 8 minutes to man anti-aircraft guns. 8 minutes to raise steam and disperse ships. Not enough. Nowhere close to enough. But it was all he had given them. 0613. Air raid sirens began wailing across Truk Lagoon. The sound cut through the morning calm like a knife. High-pitched and oscillating. Urgent. Men poured from barracks. Pilots sprinted toward aircraft. Gun crews raced to their stations. Controlled chaos erupting across 4 islands simultaneously. Aboard the cruiser, Hiryu Vice Admiral Yamakawa heard the sirens and felt ice crystallize in his chest. His communication officer burst onto the bridge. Sir, radar reports massive air raid inbound. 90-plus aircraft. Arrival estimated 0618. Yamakawa checked his watch. 0616? 2 minutes. Impossible. Impossible to launch fighters in 2 minutes. Impossible to raise steam from coal boilers. Impossible to weigh anchor and maneuver 45 ships out of the lagoon through the narrow channel in the reef. They were trapped. Sitting ducks. He grabbed the radio handset. Asuka, this is Hiryu, battle stations. All hands to battle stations immediately. The response came within seconds. His son's voice, young and uncertain. Father, what is happening? American carriers, Yamakawa said. He kept his voice level. Professional. Get your men ready, Kenji. Man your guns. How many carriers, Father? Yamakawa did not answer. Because he did not know. Because the numbers did not matter. Because whatever was coming would be more than Truk could handle. Do your duty, he said instead. Make me proud. Yes, sir. The radio crackled. Yamakawa stared across the 800 yards of water separating Hiryu from the destroyer Asuka. He could see men moving on her deck, running to their stations, preparing for what was coming. His son was over there, the boy he had promised to keep safe. Yamakawa had broken many promises in his career, promises to subordinates, promises to himself, but never the promise to his wife, never that one. He raised his binoculars and focused on the southern horizon. 0617, 1 minute. The sky was empty, blue and clear. The sunrise still beautiful. Then at 0618, exactly 72 Hellcat fighters appeared low over the water. They came in fast and low. Wave-top height, so low the spray from their prop wash created white trails across the lagoon surface. Then they climbed, steep and vertical, afterburners roaring, climbing to attack altitude in seconds. Lieutenant Commander James Harrison led the first fighter sweep, 31 years old. From Nebraska, crop duster before the war. A man who understood flying the way some men understood breathing. He had studied the reconnaissance photos for hours, memorized every airfield, every revetment, every taxiway. He knew where the Japanese parked their fighters, knew their morning routine, knew they would be vulnerable. Through his gun sight, he saw Dublin Island airfield spread below. Rows of aircraft parked wingtip to wingtip, Zeros and Bettys and patrol bombers. 30 aircraft visible, maybe more in the hangars. Some were already starting engines. Pilots climbing into cockpits. Ground crews pulling chocks. Too slow. Harrison armed his guns, 650 caliber Brownings, 3,000 rounds per minute combined rate of fire. He rolled inverted, pulled the stick, dove. The airfield rushed up. He centered the gun sight on a Zero just beginning to taxi, pressed the trigger. The Hellcat shuddered as the guns hammered. Tracers arced down. 50 caliber rounds stitched across the Zero's fuselage and wing. The fuel tank erupted. Orange fireball, black smoke. Harrison pulled up, climbed, rolled, looked for the next target. All around him, 71 other Hellcats were doing the same thing. Diving, firing, climbing. A choreographed dance of destruction. On the ground, Japanese pilots who had almost reached their aircraft died in the open. Ground crews with fire extinguishers were cut down. Ammunition dumps exploded. Fuel trucks burned. Within 5 minutes, 30 aircraft were destroyed on Dublin Island alone. Similar scenes unfolded at Etten-Moen and Perham airfields. Coordinated, simultaneous, overwhelming, a few Japanese fighters managed to take off. 15 aircraft got airborne from all 4 fields combined. Brave pilots and obsolete fighters facing overwhelming numbers. 13 of those 15 were shot down within 4 minutes. The other 2 fled west and escaped. By 0630, Japanese air power at Truk had been annihilated. 365 aircraft had defended the base the previous day. By 0635, fewer than 50 remained operational, and most of those were damaged. Aboard Hiryu, Admiral Yamakawa watched through binoculars as smoke columns rose from all four airfields, thick black pillars reaching thousands of feet into the morning sky. The smell of burning aviation fuel drifted across the water. His executive officer stood beside him, face pale. "Sir, we need to get underway. We need to leave the lagoon." Yamakawa lowered the binoculars. "Get me steam, any way possible. I want this ship moving in 2 hours. Sir, coal boilers require 3 hours minimum." "Then do it in two," Yamakawa said. His voice was ice. "Or we die here." The executive officer ran to relay the orders. Yamakawa turned his attention to the destroyer Asuka. Through the binoculars, he could see her anti-aircraft guns training skyward, crews manning their stations. His son would be at the aft gun director, doing his following orders. The boy had wanted glory. He was about to get more than he bargained for. 742. The second wave arrived. 100 aircraft, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, fighters providing escort. They spread across the lagoon like a swarm. Each pilot had assigned targets. Each crew had studied the photographs. They knew which ships mattered, which ships to hit first. The destroyer Fumizuki was closest to the southern channel. She would die first. 3 torpedo bombers approached from different angles. Classic anvil attack. No matter which way Fumizuki turned, at least one torpedo would hit. Her captain tried anyway. Ordered emergency reverse. The destroyer shuddered as her screws bit water. She began moving backward, slowly, too slowly. The first torpedo struck port side amidships. The explosion lifted Fumizuki's bow 10 feet out of the water. Men and equipment flew overboard. The hull buckled. Before she could settle, the second torpedo hit. Then the third. Fumizuki rolled to port, capsized in 90 seconds. 200 men aboard. 17 survived. The light cruiser Agano had been damaged by submarine attack 3 weeks prior. She sat immobile in the northern lagoon awaiting repair parts that would never arrive. No propulsion, no maneuverability, a stationary target. 4 torpedo bombers attacked her simultaneously. All 4 torpedoes hit. The cruiser broke in half, sank in 4 minutes. 180 men trapped below decks drowned. The submarine tender Hanmaru carried ammunition and torpedoes in her holds. A dive bomber pilot spotted her and recognized the target type. He rolled into his attack dive. 60 degrees. Airspeed building. The ship growing larger in his bomb sight. Release point. The 1,000-pound bomb dropped free. The pilot pulled out of the dive, felt the G-forces crushing him into his seat, pulled harder. The helldiver groaned but held together. Behind him, the bomb penetrated Hanmaru's deck and continued down through 2 internal decks before detonating in the magazine. The explosion was catastrophic. The entire ship vanished in an orange and white fireball. The blast wave capsized a nearby fishing boat 200 yards away. Windows shattered on Dublon Island, half a mile distant. The explosion was felt aboard every ship in the lagoon. Men looked up from their stations, saw the mushroom cloud rising, understood that nowhere was safe. The destroyer Asuka trembled as another explosion echoed across the lagoon. Lieutenant Kenji Yamakawa stood at the aft gun director, hands gripping the rails so hard his knuckles had gone white. 22 years old, Naval Academy graduate with honors. A young officer who had spent 2 years dreaming of surface combat against American cruisers. The kind of clean, honorable battle his instructors had described. Ships maneuvering, guns blazing, victory or death decided by skill and courage. This was nothing like that. American dive bombers circled overhead like vultures. Too high for his 5-inch guns to reach effectively. Too many to track. They attacked in coordinated pairs. One would draw fire while the other rolled into its bombing run. Kenji's gun crews fired until the barrels glowed red. Fired until spent shell casings covered the deck ankle deep. Fired until their ears bled and their shoulders bruised from the constant concussion. They hit nothing. The Americans were too fast, too well trained, too numerous. Around the lagoon, ships were dying. Kenji had watched Fumizuki capsize, watched Agano break in half, watched Hanmaru erupt in that terrible fireball that had turned night into day for 3 full seconds. Asuka had no steam yet, no propulsion, anchored in place like every other vessel in the lagoon. The engineers below decks were working miracles, but miracles took time. Time they did not have. 0755. A dive bomber rolled inverted above Asuka, began its attack run. Kenji shouted into the sound-powered phone. Bomber diving starboard quarter. All guns engage. The 5-inch mount swung, tracked, fired. The bomber kept coming. Kenji could see it now. See the bomb slung beneath its belly. See the pilot hunched in the cockpit. See death approaching at terminal velocity. The first bomb missed, struck the water 10 yards off the starboard beam. The explosion created a column of water that drenched the entire starboard side. Shrapnel peppered the hull. The dive bomber pulled out, climbed, vanished into the smoke haze. Kenji allowed himself one breath of relief. Then the second bomber appeared. This one came from the port side. Lower approach, faster. Kenji's guns tracked, but the angle was wrong. The bomber was already too close, already releasing. The 1,000-pound bomb fell free, tumbled, stabilized. Kenji watched it fall. Time stretched. Everything became crystalline and slow. He could see the bomb's fins, see the fuse assembly, see the way sunlight glinted off the metal casing. He thought of his father aboard Hiryu 800 yards away, thought of his mother's grave in Kyoto, thought of Michiko, the fisherman's daughter who wrote him letters every week, who waited for him, who believed he would come home and they would marry and have children and grow old together. He thought, I will never see her again. The bomb struck Asuka's forward magazine. The explosion killed 40 men instantly, vaporized them, left no bodies to recover. The blast tore through the forward third of the ship, buckled hull plates, destroyed the forward gun mount and the bridge structure above it. Asuka listed 30 degrees to port, kept listing. Kenji was thrown against the gun director shield. His head struck metal. Blood ran into his eyes. He wiped it away, forced himself upright. The ship was dying. He could feel it. The way she wallowed, the way water poured through the ruptured hull. She had maybe 15 minutes, maybe less. The captain's voice crackled over the sound-powered phone. Damage report. Kenji forced his voice steady. Forward magazine destroyed. Estimate 40 dead. Hull breach forward. We are taking water. Severe list. Can we save her? Negative, sir. We are sinking. Silence on the line. Then abandon ship. All hands, get the men off, Kenji acknowledged. Turn to his gun crews. Secure your stations. Abandon ship, over the side. Swim for the nearest island. The men stared at him. Young faces, frightened faces. Boys, most of them. 17, 18, 19 years old. Move, Kenji shouted. That is an order. They moved, kicked off their shoes, pulled their life vests tight, went over the rail into the oil-slicked water. Kenji grabbed the sound-powered phone one last time. Called the bridge. His captain answered. Kenji, get off the ship. Sir, I need to ensure all aft personnel evacuate first. Kenji, your father is watching. Do not make him watch you die. Kenji looked across the 800 yards of water toward Hiryu. He could see the cruiser's silhouette, could imagine his father on the bridge with binoculars, watching. Tell him I did my duty, Kenji said. Then a second bomb hit. This one struck the bridge directly. The structure collapsed. Kenji felt the deck lurch beneath him, felt Asuka rolling, going over. He did not have time to jump, did not have time to think. The destroyer capsized, rolled completely inverted. Kenji was underwater, trapped beneath the overturned hull, disoriented in the darkness and debris. His lungs burned. He swam, kicked, reached for light. His hand found metal. A hatch, closed. He pulled. It would not move. The pressure in his chest became unbearable. His vision narrowed, darkness closing in. He thought of Michiko one more time. Her smile, her letters, the future they would never have. Then the darkness took him. Through binoculars, Vice Admiral Yamakawa watched his son's ship capsize. He watched it happen in perfect clarity. Watched the bomb hit the bridge. Watched Asuka roll to port. Watched her keel break the surface. Watched her go completely inverted, screws still visible, slowly sinking. He watched and felt nothing. Not grief, not rage, not even surprise. Just a terrible cold emptiness. His executive officer stood beside him. Said nothing. There was nothing to say. Commander Sato, the flag lieutenant, approached quietly, 42 years old, career staff officer, a man who had served under Yamakawa for 3 years. who understood what losing Kenji meant. Sir Sato said, "Engineering reports 1 more hour until we have steam." Yamakawa lowered the binoculars. His hands were steady. His voice when he spoke was calm. "Then we wait 1 more hour. And then we leave this graveyard." Around them, Truk Lagoon burned. 32 ships sunk or sinking by noon. Oil fires spreading across the water. Smoke so thick it blocked the sun. Yamakawa had promised his dying wife he would keep their son safe. He had broken that promise. And in breaking it, he realized something terrible and liberating. He had nothing left to lose. Aboard USS Enterprise, Rear Admiral Webb stood in the flag plot and received the strike reports. His operations officer read the numbers. 32 confirmed kills. Destroyers, cruisers, submarines, auxiliaries. 200 aircraft destroyed. Estimated Japanese casualties, 2,100. American losses. 3 aircraft. 3 pilots. Webb listened. His face showed nothing. Lieutenant Robert King was one of those 3 pilots. Webb had known him, not well, but he had signed the order sending King into combat, had shaken his hand before the mission, had said good hunting. King's dive bomber had been hit by anti-aircraft fire. The engine caught fire. He could have bailed out, could have taken his chances in the water. Instead, he steered the burning aircraft away from the task force, away from the carriers and destroyers and cruisers filled with men, crashed it into empty ocean 2 miles from Enterprise. The impact killed him instantly. His body was never recovered. Webb would write the letter to King's wife tonight, would try to find words that made sense of it, would fail because there were no such words. He pulled out his wallet, added a 17th piece of paper, wrote the name carefully. Robert King, Lieutenant, United States Navy, folded it, put it with the others. His operations officer was still talking. "Sir, the strike has exceeded all expectations. Truk is effectively neutralized. We can withdraw now or press the attack tomorrow." Webb looked at the map, at the red marks indicating sunken ships, at the black marks indicating destroyed aircraft, at the numbers that reduced human lives to statistics. "We press the attack," he said. "Tomorrow we finish what we started." Then he turned to his chief of staff. "Send for Admiral Strauss. Tell him to prepare the battleships for night operations. I want them to sweep the northern approaches. Anything trying to escape gets sunk." The chief of staff hesitated. "Sir, that will put the battleships at significant risk. If Japanese submarines are active in those waters, then Admiral Strauss will deal with them," Webb said. His voice carried an edge now. "The battleships wanted a piece of this fight. Now they will get it." The chief of staff saluted and departed. Webb remained in the flag plot alone, staring at the map, at the 17 names in his wallet, at the weight of command that grew heavier with every decision. Tomorrow would add more names. He was certain of that. The only question was how many. 2,000 hours. Full darkness over the Pacific. USS New Jersey and USS Iowa detached from Task Force 58. 2 heavy cruisers and 4 destroyers accompanied them. The Surface Action Group, Hunters in the Night. Rear Admiral William Strauss commanded from New Jersey's Flag Bridge, 56 years old, battleship officer through and through, a man who had spent 30 years believing that battleships were the ultimate expression of naval power. That belief was dying, had been dying since Pearl Harbor, since Midway, since every major engagement where carriers decided the outcome while battleships watched from the sidelines. Tonight was supposed to change that. Tonight, the battle wagons would prove their worth. Strauss studied the radar repeater screen. Clear for now. The formation steamed southwest at 25 knots. New Jersey and Iowa in the lead. Massive, powerful, capable of 33 knots if needed. Each mounting 9 16-inch guns, each displacing 45,000 tons. The most powerful surface combatants ever built. His chief of staff approached. "Sir, intelligence reports several Japanese vessels escaped the lagoon during the afternoon strikes, likely heading northwest toward Palau." "Then we will find them," Strauss said. He walked out onto the bridge wing. Night air, salt spray, the throb of turbines transmitted through the deck. The bow wave glowing with phosphorescence. Strauss had waited years for this. A surface action, battleship against cruiser. The kind of engagement he had trained for, the kind that proved big guns still mattered. But even as he anticipated it, doubt gnawed at him. Webb's orders had been clear. Sink anything fleeing. Try to force surrender if possible. But do not risk the battleships unnecessarily. The subtext was obvious. Battleships were secondary now, useful for shore bombardment and screening carriers, but not essential, not the way carriers were essential. Strauss pushed the thought away. Tonight he would prove otherwise. 2,300 hours. New Jersey's air search radar picked up a surface contact, bearing 270 degrees, range 28,000 yards, 14 miles. The radar officer called out the information. Single contact, speed approximately 18 knots, signature consistent with light cruiser. Strauss felt his pulse quicken. Contact confirmed. All ships increased speed to 28 knots, close to engagement range. The battle group accelerated. The vibration increased. 35,000 tons of warship pushing through the ocean at nearly 30 miles per hour. Iowa steaming 2,000 yards to port matched course and speed. The two sisters cutting through the darkness in parallel. Hunting. Aboard the cruiser, Hiryu Vice Admiral Yamakawa stood on the darkened bridge and watched the stars. His chief engineer had accomplished the impossible. Raise steam in under 3 hours. Not full steam, not enough for Hiryu's maximum speed of 35 knots, but enough for 18 knots. Enough to move. They had weighed anchor at 1,800 hours, maneuvered through the southern channel, left the burning lagoon behind. Now they steamed northwest, toward Palau, 1,000 miles distant. If they could maintain 18 knots, they would arrive in 3 days, if the Americans did not find them first. Yamakawa knew the odds. American radar was superior. American battleships were faster. If they were hunting, Hiryu would be found. His executive officer had suggested surrender, had argued carefully that Hiryu could not win a surface engagement, that the crew's lives should not be thrown away uselessly. Yamakawa had considered it, for perhaps 10 seconds. Then he thought of Kenji, 22 years old, dead beneath an overturned destroyer 800 yards from where his father had stood watching. Yamakawa had promised to keep him safe, had failed, had brought him to the fortress that could not fall and watched it fall around him. What did he have left except defiance? We do not surrender, he told his executive officer. If American ships find us, we fight. That is my decision. The executive officer had not argued further. Now Hiryu ran through the darkness. 18 knots. Every man aboard knowing they were being hunted. Every man knowing the Americans had radar and could see in the dark, but running anyway. Because orders said run. Because admirals said fight. Because there was nothing else left to do. 23:30 hours. The lookout called out. Silhouettes, bearing 105 degrees, range approximately 15,000 yards. Yamakawa raised his binoculars. Saw nothing at first. Then the shapes resolved. 2 large vessels, battleship silhouettes. The distinctive profile of Iowa-class ships. His blood went cold. 18 knots. Hiryu's maximum current speed. Iowa-class battleships could make 33 knots. The math was simple and final. An American destroyer approached from Hiryu's starboard quarter, close to 5,000 yards, turned on a signal lamp. The Morse code was clear. Stop your engines. Prepare to be boarded. Yamakawa's communications officer read the signal aloud. Sir, they are demanding our surrender. Yamakawa looked at his bridge crew. Young officers, good men. They had families, futures. They deserved to live. He could order the engines stopped, could signal compliance, could save their lives. His son's face appeared in his mind. Kenji at age 5 learning to tie knots. Kenji at 12 accepted to Naval Academy. Kenji at 20 graduating with honors. Kenji at 22 dying in darkness beneath a capsized hull. Admiral, his executive officer said quietly, we should consider their offer, the crew. Yamakawa turned to his gunnery officer. Do we have range on that destroyer? Yes, sir. 5,000 yards. We can hit her. Then lock all batteries on that destroyer, Yamakawa said. His voice was ice. Prepare to fire, sir, the executive officer protested. If we fire, the battleships will destroy us. Yes, Yamakawa said, they will. But we are samurai of the sea. We do not surrender to threats. We fight or we die. There is no third option. He turned to the gunnery officer. Fire when ready. The 5-inch guns trained, locked, fired. The night split with muzzle flashes. 6 guns firing simultaneously. 12 rounds in the first salvo. 2 hit the American destroyer, Orange explosions bloomed on her superstructure. The destroyer staggered, turned hard, laid smoke, retreated. Yamakawa watched her go, felt a grim satisfaction. At least one blow landed, at least they had drawn blood. His executive officer looked at him with something between horror and respect. "Now they will kill us all," the officer said. Yamakawa nodded, "Yes, but we will die like warriors, not like dogs begging for scraps." He turned to face the northwest, toward the battleship, silhouettes visible now against the stars. "Come then," he whispered. "Finish it." Aboard New Jersey, Admiral Strauss received the report that destroyer Bradford had been hit. 2 casualties, moderate damage to the superstructure. Bradford was withdrawing under smoke. The Japanese cruiser had fired first, had refused surrender, had chosen combat. Strauss felt the decision crystallize. No more chances, no more mercy. He turned to his gunnery officer. "Main battery, target bearing 270, range 16,000 yards. Load armor piercing, fire when ready." The gunnery officer acknowledged, turned to his fire control team. The fire control computer hummed, calculating. Range, speed, wind, temperature, the curvature of the Earth. 1,000 variables reduced to a single firing solution. Turret 1 trained out to starboard. 3 16-inch guns, each barrel 67 feet long. Each shell's 2,700 pounds of hardened steel. The guns elevated, 7 degrees above horizontal. "Ready, sir. Fire." "02 1730 hours." The night exploded. The muzzle blast from 3 16-inch guns firing simultaneously created a pressure wave that could be felt a mile away. The flash illuminated the entire ocean, bright as daylight for one instant. The deck heaved. 45,000 tons of battleships shuddered from the recoil. The shells left the barrels at 2,500 feet per second. Mach 2.3, supersonic. The crack of their passage like thunder. Flight time 28 seconds. Aboard Hiryu, lookouts saw the flash on the horizon. Then 3 seconds later heard the sound. Deep, prolonged. A roar that seemed to shake the air itself. Someone on the bridge whispered a prayer. 28 seconds later, the first salvo arrived. One shell fell short, struck the ocean 50 yards ahead of Hiryu. The water column rose 100 feet. The ship passed through the falling spray. 2 shells went long, overshot by 50 yards. Their splashes bracketed Hiryu perfectly. The gunnery officer aboard New Jersey adjusted his solution, decreased range slightly, compensated for target movement. Second salvo. Fire. 2:18 10 hours. 3 more shells arced through the darkness. This time, 2 hit. The first 16-inch shell struck Hiryu amidships, penetrated the thin armor of her hull like tissue paper, continued through 2 internal decks, detonated in the forward engine room. The explosion released energy equivalent to 500 pounds of TNT in an enclosed space. The pressure wave pulverized everything within 30 feet, killed 40 men instantly, not burned, not wounded, simply ceased to exist. The engine room flooded. Hiryu's speed dropped to 12 knots, 10 knots, 5. The second shell hit the forward gun turret. The turret was not armored to withstand 16-inch fire. The shell punched through the turret face, detonated inside. The explosion blew the entire gun mount off the ship, sent it cartwheeling into the ocean, killed everyone inside the turret and everyone on the deck above it. Yamakawa on the bridge felt the deck buckle beneath him, felt the ship dying. Damage reports flooded in, each one worse than the last. Forward engine room flooded, aft engine room losing pressure, forward magazine on fire, steering casualty, list increasing. "How long?" he asked his damage control officer. "Minutes, sir. We are sinking." Yamakawa nodded. He had known this was coming, had chosen it. "Abandon ship," he ordered. "All hands, over the side." "That is an order." His officers stared at him. "You are relieved of duty," Yamakawa said. "Save yourselves, I will stay." "Admiral," his executive officer said. "You can still. Go," Yamakawa shouted. "That is a direct order. Abandon ship now." The officers hesitated, then obeyed. They were trained to follow orders. Even orders like this, they fled the bridge, went down to the main deck, started releasing life rafts, getting men over the side. Commander Sato lingered at the bridge hatch. "Sir, please, go," Yamakawa said more gently. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them we did not surrender." Sato saluted, left. Yamakawa remained alone on the bridge, watched the battleship in the distance, watched the muzzle flashes as it fired a third salvo, thought of his wife, thought of his son, thought of the promise he had broken. "Kenji," he whispered, "I am coming." The third salvo arrived. 3 shells, all 3 hit. 1 struck the bridge. The structure collapsed, steel and glass and bodies falling. Yamakawa was crushed beneath the wreckage, died instantly. The other 2 shells penetrated to Hiryu's magazines. 240 hours. The magazines detonated. The explosion was visible for 30 miles, a fireball that briefly turned night into day. The blast wave rolled across the water, felt aboard Iowa 10 miles distant. Hiryu disintegrated, simply came apart, bow and stern sections separating, both sinking within 4 minutes. 475 men had been aboard. 17 survived, picked up by American destroyers an hour later. Vice Admiral Takeshi Yamakawa was not among them. Iowa and New Jersey continued their sweep through the darkness, found 3 more targets. Destroyer Nowaki tried to flee northwest. Iowa's 16-inch guns fired once. The destroyer disintegrated. Fleet oiler Hoyomaru attempted to surrender, stopped engines, turned on lights. The American destroyers took her crew off, sank her with torpedoes. Light cruiser Naka fought back, fired torpedoes, missed. New Jersey's secondary battery destroyed her in 12 minutes. By 400 hours on February 18th, Admiral Strauss's Surface Action Group had sunk or crippled 6 Japanese vessels, 2 light cruisers, 3 destroyers, 1 fleet oiler. They had expended 297 16-inch shells. The ammunition expenditure would be noted in reports, would become part of the record, would contribute to the myth. But Strauss felt no satisfaction, only a growing hollowness. He had proved battleships could still kill, but he had not proved they mattered. Dawn, February 18th, 1944. Destroyer USS Bradford pulled alongside the scattered debris field where Hiryu had died. Oil slicks, wreckage, bodies floating face down in life jackets that had failed to save them. And survivors, 17 men clinging to debris, faces black with oil, eyes hollow with shock. Bradford's crew threw lines, pulled them aboard, wrapped them in blankets, gave them water and coffee and cigarettes. One of the survivors was Commander Sato, 42 years old, Hiryu's flag lieutenant, senior surviving officer. An American intelligence officer came to question him 2 hours later, a lieutenant commander who spoke passable Japanese, polite, professional, offering more coffee. The questions were routine at first. How many ships in the lagoon? What damage from the airstrikes? What were your orders? Sato answered mechanically. His mind was still in the water, still watching Hiryu explode, still feeling the blast wave wash over him. Then the American asked, "How many battleships attacked you last night?" Sato looked up, his eyes focused. "Many," he said. "At least 8, perhaps 10. The guns never stopped firing. Shells everywhere, continuous explosions." The American's eyebrows rose slightly. 8 to 10 battleships, you are certain. Sato's hands shook as he raised the coffee cup. I counted the muzzle flashes. Multiple ships, multiple positions. The bombardment was constant. How could it be fewer? The intelligence officer made notes, did not correct him, did not explain that only 2 battleships had been present. That rapid-fire 16-inch guns could create the illusion of many ships in darkness. That terror multiplied perception. He simply wrote down enemy reports 8 to 10 large battleships in Surface Action Group. Later that day, the report went up the chain, to Admiral Webb, to Pacific Fleet Headquarters, to Washington. No one corrected it. No one saw the need. By nightfall, Japanese radio intercepts were reporting the attack. The numbers grew with each retelling. 8 battleships became 10. 10 became 11. The specificity of 11 made it believable, made it real. 11 Iowa-class battleships destroyed Truk, fired hundreds of shells, annihilated everything in their path. The myth was born from trauma and darkness and the limits of human perception. Born from a survivor who had watched his admiral die and his ship disintegrate and needed to explain the inexplicable. Born because two battleships with superior technology had created firepower that seemed impossible. Born because myths are sometimes more useful than truth. February 18th. The carriers resumed their assault at dawn. Fewer targets remained. The previous day had destroyed most of the high-value ships. What was left were auxiliaries, damaged vessels, small craft trying to flee. The American pilots pressed their attacks anyway, systematically, professionally, burning what remained. Lieutenant Commander James Harrison led another fighter sweep over the airfields, found a dozen aircraft that had been hidden in revetments, destroyed them, strafed hangars, set fire to fuel dumps. As he pulled up from his strafing run, Harrison saw the lagoon spread below, 32 wrecks visible in the clear water. Oil fires, smoke, bodies. This was not combat. This was extermination. He had joined the Navy to fight, to test himself against worthy opponents, to prove his skill mattered, but skill did not matter here. Only numbers, only technology. The Japanese had fought bravely with obsolete equipment and lost everything. Harrison felt no pride, only a vague sickness. He climbed to altitude and turned back toward Enterprise. The anti-aircraft fire was lighter today. Fewer guns, fewer trained crews. The Japanese were learning that shooting back only drew more attackers. At 1000 hours, a strike group found a small convoy fleeing northwest. 3 transport ships escorted by a single destroyer. Slow, overloaded with evacuees from Truk. The dive bombers attacked. The destroyer tried to screen the transports, fired everything she had, shot down one American aircraft. Ensign David Martinez, 23 years old, from Texas. His Helldiver took a 5-inch shell through the cockpit, killed him instantly. The aircraft spiraled into the ocean. It was not enough. All 4 ships were sunk within 20 minutes. Aboard Enterprise, Admiral Webb received the reports, added Martinez's name to his wallet. 18 names now. He stood alone in his cabin, staring at the small pieces of paper. 18 young men who had trusted his orders. 18 families who would receive telegrams. For what? To destroy a secondary base, to sink supply ships and transports, to prove that carriers could strike anywhere. Webb had known before the operation began that the super battleships were gone, had known the decisive blow was impossible, had let his pilots believe otherwise because belief sustained morale. Strategic deception, necessary lies. He told himself this as he added the 18th name. Told himself the math worked, that destroying Truk saved more lives than it cost, that shortening the war justified the means. But the names in his wallet did not care about strategy. They were just dead. A knock at the cabin door. His chief of staff. Sir Admiral Strauss requests permission to come aboard. He wishes to speak with you privately. Webb folded the wallet. Put it away. Send him in. William Strauss looked 10 years older than he had 2 days ago. He sat in Webb's cabin, coffee untouched, staring at nothing. The vitality that had animated him before the operation was gone, replaced by something hollow. Webb waited, let the silence stretch. Finally asked, how many ships did you sink? 6, confirmed, Strauss said. His voice was flat. 2 light cruisers, 3 destroyers, 1 fleet oiler, total expenditure, 297 16-inch shells. Excellent gunnery, Webb said. Strauss laughed, a bitter sound. Excellent gunnery. Yes, we hit stationary targets in the dark with radar-directed fire control. Very impressive. You sound like you regret it. Strauss looked up, met Webb's eyes. Do you know what happened with Hiryu? I read the report. Did you read the part where we gave them a chance to surrender? Where they fired on Bradford instead? Where I ordered them destroyed? They made their choice, Webb said carefully. Did they? Strauss shot back. We gave them a choice between shameful surrender and honorable death. For a Japanese admiral, that is not really a choice at all. He leaned forward. Here you had 18 knots. We had 33. She had 5-inch guns. We had 16-inch. The engagement lasted 23 minutes from first shot to magazine explosion. It was not a battle, Mark. It was an execution. They fired first, Webb repeated. Because we cornered them, Strauss said. Because we left them no option they could live with. I have been thinking about it for 2 days. wondering if we could have done it differently. Webb's expression hardened. Second-guessing gets men killed, Will. You know that? The mission was to sink enemy vessels attempting to escape. You accomplished the mission. That is what matters. Is it, Strauss asked? Because I keep thinking about that admiral, Yamakawa. Intelligence says his son died on a destroyer during the first day's strikes. Did you know that? Webb said nothing. He could have surrendered, Strauss continued. Could have saved his crew. But he chose to fight instead. And I killed him for it. Killed 458 men because one man refused to surrender. 458 enemy combatants, Webb corrected. In wartime, following their admiral's orders just as you were following mine. Strauss stood, walked to the porthole, stared out at the ocean. I have spent 30 years believing in battleship warfare, he said quietly, believing in honor and courage and the glory of surface combat. I thought tonight would prove that battleships still matter, that we are not obsolete. And instead I learned that modern naval warfare is not about honor, Strauss said. It is about technology, radar, fire control computers. The side with better equipment wins. Skill and courage are secondary. He turned back to Webb. We did not fight them. We had superior technology, and we used it to slaughter them. That is the truth. That is what battleships are for now. Not decisive fleet actions, just mopping up after the carriers do the real work. Webb considered his response carefully. You are having a crisis of conscience, I understand, but the alternative to what we did is a longer war, more American deaths. We won decisively because we had better ships and better technology, and we were willing to use both. That is not murder, Will. That is war. Strauss was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, how do you carry it? The weight of command. The decisions that cost lives. Webb pulled out his wallet, showed Strauss the folded papers inside. 18 names, every pilot I have lost since taking command. I carry them because someone needs to remember they were more than statistics. Does it help? No, Webb said. But it reminds me that every order has a cost, that I should never give orders lightly. That is the burden of command, Will. You carry it because someone must, because the alternative is chaos. Strauss nodded slowly, sat back down. Webb leaned forward. I need to know if you can continue. If you can lead men into combat knowing what it key. Strauss met his eyes. Yes, I can continue. But I will never again believe that war is glorious, Goodwebb said. Because it is not. It is necessary. There is a difference. By 1800 hours on February 18th, the operation was complete. Task Force 58 withdrew to the northeast, left Truk burning behind them. The final accounting was brutal. Japanese losses. 45 ships sunk, ranging from light cruisers to small inter-island ferries. 250 aircraft destroyed, most on the ground, never given a chance to fight. 4,500 Japanese dead. Sailors, soldiers, civilian workers, technicians. Men who had believed Truk was safe, who had been told the Americans could never reach them. American losses, 25 aircraft shot down, 25 aviators killed or missing. No ships lost, only destroyer Bradford suffered damage. Moderate, repaired within a week. The disparity was staggering. Nearly 200 to 1 kill ratio, the most lopsided naval victory in modern warfare. It proved what Webb had known. That carrier aviation had revolutionized naval combat. That fixed bases, however well defended, could not survive sustained air attack. That the Pacific War would be won by carriers, not battleships. It proved what Strauss had learned. That technology mattered more than courage. That superior equipment could turn combat into slaughter. That the age of battleship glory was over. It proved what the Japanese high command feared. That nowhere was safe. That the defensive perimeter could not hold. That American industrial might and technological superiority would grind them down regardless of how bravely individual soldiers fought. 5,000 miles away in Tokyo, Admiral Manechi Koga sat in his office at Combined Fleet Headquarters and read the reports from Truk. 45 ships, 4,000 casualties. The Gibraltar of the Pacific fallen in 2 days. His staff officers stood silent, waiting for orders, waiting for the admiral to explain how this disaster fit into the larger strategy. Koga studied the numbers. Survivors reported at least 11 American battleships in the surface action group. Intelligence confirmed only 2 Iowa-class ships existed in the Pacific theater. The discrepancy was obvious. Radar-directed gunnery, night combat, fear and darkness magnifying perception. 2 ships had created the illusion of 11 through superior technology and rapid fire. His intelligence officer cleared his throat. "Sir, should we correct the reports? Inform our forces that only 2 battleships were actually present." Koga considered, thought about morale, about explanations, about how to frame this defeat. "No," he said finally. "We do not correct it, sir. Let the report stand," Koga ordered. "Let our forces believe the Americans attacked with overwhelming strength. 11 battleships, 9 carriers. Unstoppable power. But, sir, that is not true." "It is true enough," Koga said. "The Americans have industrial capacity we cannot match. They will build more carriers, more battleships, more of everything. The specific number at Truk matters less than the strategic reality." He stood, walked to the map of the Pacific, studied the defensive perimeter that was supposed to hold back the American advance. After Truk, that perimeter was meaningless. "We cannot defend fixed positions," Koga said. "The Americans have proven they can strike anywhere with carrier aviation. Our strategy must change." To what his chief of staff asked. "Fighting withdrawal," Koga said. "We abandon the outer islands, pull back to the Marianas, Palau, the Philippines. Fortify the inter-defense line, make the Americans pay in blood for every advance." His officers exchanged glances. That strategy would doom the garrisons on bypassed islands. Thousands of men left to wither without supplies or support. "Their sacrifice will delay the enemy," Koga said coldly. "We'll tie down American resources. We'll buy time for the homeland to prepare final defenses." He turned back to the map. Truk was supposed to be invincible. It fell in 2 days. That tells us everything we need to know about this war. We cannot win through strength. We can only hope to make victory so costly that the Americans negotiate peace. None of his officers believed that was possible, but none said so aloud. The myth of 11 battleships would spread through Japanese forces, would demoralize, would convince soldiers that resistance was futile. Koga had chosen to let it spread because the alternative was admitting that 2 ships with better technology had accomplished what seemed impossible. Better to blame defeat on overwhelming numbers than superior enemy competence. The lie became official truth. On Dublon Island, Seaman Hiro Tanaka sat in the ruins of the radar station and stared at the wreckage around him. The building had been hit during the second-day strikes. A dive bomber had put a 1,000-pound bomb through the roof. The explosion had killed everyone inside except Hiro. He had been outside, smoking a cigarette, watching the sky. Pure luck that he survived. Or perhaps not luck, perhaps punishment. Perhaps he was meant to live with what he had done. His logbook had survived the blast, partially burned but readable. He opened it, found the entry from February 17th. 0600 hours, multiple contacts detected bearing 045, range 70 miles. He had detected them at 0600, had not reported until 0612. 12 minutes wasted because he was afraid of being punished for a false alarm. 12 minutes that might have made a difference, might have allowed fighters to scramble, ships to disperse, guns to prepare, or might have changed nothing. The Americans would have attacked regardless, would have destroyed Truk regardless, would have killed 4,000 men regardless. But Hiro would never know. That was his punishment, the uncertainty, the eternal question of what if. He tore the page from the logbook, held it over a small fire burning in the debris, watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. Destroying evidence would not change what happened, would not bring back the dead, would not erase his guilt, but it was all he could do. Later that day, Japanese survivors were assembled for evacuation. A supply submarine would take senior officers to Palau. The rest would wait for surface transport that might never come. Hiro approached the officer organizing the evacuation. Requested transfer to a combat unit, any combat unit. He did not care where. The officer looked at him, young, hollow-eyed, clearly traumatized. "You are radar trained," the officer said. "We need you for technical duties." "I want to fight," Hiro said. His voice was flat. "I want combat duty." The officer studied him. understood what he was seeing: survivor's guilt, death wish, the need to atone through sacrifice. Very well, the officer said. I will put you on the list for Palau. They are forming suicide boat units, fast attack craft with torpedoes, one-way missions against American landing forces. When do I leave? Hero asked. 2 weeks, maybe less. Hero nodded, felt something like relief. 2 weeks. Then he could stop living with the 12 minutes. He wrote a letter to his mother that night, told her he was well, told her he was doing his duty, did not tell her he had volunteered to die. The letter would never reach her. The submarine carrying mail was sunk 3 days later. Hero would die at Peleliu in September. 19 years old, piloting a suicide boat loaded with explosives into an American landing craft. The explosion killed him and 12 Marines. His body was never recovered. His name was added to a memorial in Hokkaido. His mother would visit that memorial every year until she died in 1968. She never knew about the 12 minutes. Never knew her son blamed himself for Truk. Never knew he died seeking atonement for a failure that was not his fault. 4 months later, June 1944, Admiral William Strauss stood on a hilltop on Saipan and watched battleships bombard the Japanese defensive positions below. 16-inch guns firing continuously, high explosive shells, the hillside erupting in orange and black, palm trees vaporized, bunkers collapsing, the earth itself seeming to boil under the bombardment. Effective, brutal, necessary. Strauss had commanded bombardment operations for the Saipan invasion. 3 days of preliminary shelling, thousands of rounds expended, preparing the landing zones, suppressing enemy fire, shore bombardment, the new role for battleships, not glorious fleet actions, just artillery support for amphibious assaults. He had made his peace with it, or tried to. The truth he had learned at Truk stayed with him. Modern warfare was about technology and overwhelming force, not honor, not skill, just industrial capacity and the will to use it. The battleships fired until their barrels glowed, fired until the Japanese positions were moonscapes, fired until there was nothing left to fire at. Then the Marines went ashore, fought their way inland, died by the hundreds taking positions that battleships could not quite destroy. Strauss watched through binoculars, saw the young men struggling up the beaches, saw them fall, saw the survivors keep advancing. Technology could soften targets, could destroy defenses, but it could not win wars alone. That still required men willing to close with the enemy, willing to die for yards of bloody sand. The glory Strauss had once imagined did not exist. There was only duty and sacrifice and the grinding arithmetic of attrition. He thought about Admiral Yamakawa sometimes, the Japanese officer who had chosen death over surrender, who had lost his son and then lost everything. Strauss understood him now in a way he had not at Truk. Understood that some men reached a point where survival meant less than defiance, where the only choice left was how to die. War created such men on both sides, men who had lost too much, seen too much, men for whom death was release rather than defeat. Strauss was not there yet. Still believed in duty, still believed in winning, still believed the cost was justified. But he wondered how many more operations before he reached that point, before the names and the faces and the weight became too much, before he became like Yamakawa, a man with nothing left to lose. December 1945, 10 months after the war ended. Rear Admiral Marcus Webb retired, sat in his study in San Diego, and read the final casualty reports from the Pacific War. Over 100,000 American dead, naval personnel, Marines, Army, young men who had trusted their commanders, who had followed orders, who had died for strategy and objectives and the inexorable logic of total war. Webb had commanded carrier operations through the end: Truk, the Marianas, Philippine Sea, Leyte Gulf, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the final raids on the Japanese home islands. His wallet now contained 47 names, pilots killed under his command. 47 pieces of paper he had added one by one, each name written carefully, each representing a telegram sent to a family. A life ended, a universe collapsed. Operation Hailstone, the attack on Truk, had added 18 names total. Lieutenant Robert King, Ensign William Morrison, Ensign David Martinez. 15 others, 25 aircraft lost, 25 men killed for the destruction of 45 Japanese ships and the neutralization of their most important forward base. The mathematics said it was a spectacular success. 25 American deaths for 4,500 Japanese, a ratio that any commander would accept, a cost that any strategist would call minimal. Webb looked at the names in his wallet and wondered if mathematics was enough. He had known before the operation that the super battleships were gone, had known that the decisive blow was impossible, had stayed silent because revealing the truth would have damaged morale, would have made pilots question the risks they were taking. Strategic deception, necessary lies. He had told himself this for 20 months, through the rest of the war, through victory, through the celebrations and medals and congratulations, but the names remained. 47 pieces of paper that did not care about strategy. Webb had received the Congressional Medal of Honor for his role in the Pacific War. The citation praised his brilliant tactics, his bold leadership, his contribution to victory. He kept the medal in a desk drawer, did not display it, did not particularly value it. The names in his wallet mattered more. Someone knocked on the study door. His wife. "Dinner is ready, Mark. I will be there in a moment." She left, closed the door quietly. Webb sat alone, staring at 47 names, wondering if he would carry them until he died, wondering if that was penance or pride or simply the only way to remember that they had mattered. He thought about Strauss. His old friend had retired as well, taught at the Naval War College now. Webb had visited him once. They had talked about grandchildren and baseball and the weather, not about the war, never about the war. But near the end of the visit, as Webb was leaving, Strauss had asked, "Do you still carry the wallet?" Webb had nodded. Strauss had smiled, a sad smile. "Good. That means we are still human." Webb closed the wallet now, put it back in his jacket pocket, felt its weight, a few ounces of paper that somehow felt heavier than the metal in the drawer. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the peaceful San Diego evening, children playing in a neighbor's yard, cars driving past, normal life. The life those 47 men had died to preserve. The cost had been necessary. Webb believed that. The war had to be won. Japan had to be defeated. The calculations of blood and steel had favored aggressive action. But necessary and right were not the same thing. Webb carried both truths, the necessity and the kinu, the victory and the names, the strategic success and the human price. Truk Lagoon, 1975. 31 years after the battle, a memorial was dedicated. Joint ceremony. American and Japanese officials. Veterans from both sides. Rear Admiral Marcus Webb attended, 88 years old, frail, but still carrying his wallet. Commander Sato came as well, 73 years old now, living quietly in Yokohama, retired, a man who had survived when hundreds died. They met at the memorial, the two old men who had faced each other across decades and distance, survivor and architect, victim and victor. They shook hands, spoke briefly through a translator. "I am sorry for what happened to Admiral Yamakawa," Webb said. Sato nodded. He chose his path. We all did. The war demanded choices. We made them. Some of us survived to carry the memory. Webb touched his jacket pocket, where the wallet rested. "Do you carry anything?" From that night. Sato pulled out a small photograph, creased, faded. His shipmates from Hiryu, young men, smiling. 475 aboard, 17 survived. "We carry different things," Sato said, "but we both carry." "Yes," Webb agreed, "we both carry." The memorial ceremony continued, speeches about sacrifice and valor and the lessons of war. The usual words that meant everything and nothing. Webb did not listen. He stood at the water's edge, looking out over the lagoon, thinking about the 45 ships beneath the surface, the 4,000 Japanese dead, the 25 American aviators, the names in his wallet. Below the surface, the wrecks remained. The destroyer Fumizuki, in 60 feet of water, her deck guns still trained toward the sky. The submarine tender Hanmaru in 100 feet holds filled with torpedoes that would never be fired. The light cruiser Hiryu in 180 feet split in two. Admiral Yamakawa's cabin preserved by depth and darkness. The wreck's leaked oil had been leaking for 31 years, creating a slow environmental disaster. But they had also become artificial reefs. Coral grew on gun barrels. Fish lived in crew quarters. Eels made homes in engine rooms. Nature reclaiming what war had destroyed. Life emerging from death. Webb died 5 years later, 1980. Heart attack at age 93. His wallet was found in his jacket pocket. 47 names still inside. Still folded carefully. Still carried. The wallet was buried with him. 47 names carried to the grave. The myth says 11 Iowa-class battleships destroyed Truk. The truth says 2. Admiral Takeshi Yamakawa did not die because of 11 battleships. He died because Tokyo ignored his warnings, because his son drowned 800 yards away, because he chose defiance over surrender. Seaman Hiro Tanaka's 12 minutes did not kill 4,000 men, but they haunted him until he died seeking atonement at Peleliu. 19 years old, a failure that was never his fault. Admiral Marcus Webb carried 47 names for 35 years, not from guilt, but because someone needed to remember they were more than statistics. Admiral William Strauss learned that modern war is decided by technology, not honor. The lesson killed his faith in battleship glory, but not his sense of duty. 2 battleships created the illusion of 11 through superior firepower and the limits of human perception in darkness and terror. The illusion became myth. The myth became legend. The legend persists 80 years later. But underneath are the names, 47 in a wallet, 4,500 on a memorial. Each one a universe that ended. The ships at Truk rest in peace now. Coral grows where guns fired. Fish swim where men died. Oil still leaks from ruptured hulls. Nature reclaims but does not forget. What remains is memory, and the weight we carry. We carry it because the dead deserve more than myths. They deserve truth, however painful. They deserve to be remembered as they were. Human, flawed, brave, doing their duty as they understood it, until the very end. Truk Lagoon, present day. The water is clear and blue. Sunlight penetrates to 60 feet. A diver descends. Below the destroyer Fumizuki, her deck guns still trained skyward, waiting for aircraft that will never come. The diver swims through the crew quarters, sees a sake cup, a photograph of a family, a letter never sent. He surfaces, removes his mask, breathes. Above him, the sky is empty and peaceful. Below him, 45 ships hold their silence. The names remain. The memory carries on. If this story mattered to you, carry it forward. Not because it celebrates victory, but because 4,500 men on both sides deserve to be more than footnotes in history. They deserve names and someone who remembers those names. That is the only memorial that truly matters.